An island country located near Greenland, Iceland, attached both culturally and historically to Europe, is known only through its atypical climate and its volcanic eruptions. However, this country is full of unusual facts, and its wonderful culture is much richer than you might think, whether through its mythology, its history, or its language. It is for this reason that today, we are going to make you discover Iceland from a new angle, and entrust you with 10 facts that you did not know about this country. If you're new to our channel, consider subscribing and activating the notification bell, so you can be notified each time we publish a new video. Let's get started. 1. The smell of water. And yes, thanks to its volcanic activity, the Icelanders use steam directly from the thermal springs to heat their pipes. This technique, which has the enormous advantage of being ecological and free, does not only have advantages, and unfortunately for our nostrils, the smell of sulfur given off by geothermal springs is very similar to that of rotten eggs. Suffice to say that good hot baths are not a part of the pleasure as much appreciated in places heated by thermal springs as in the rest of the world. You eventually get used to it, but at least a considerable water saving is achieved, since the smell is hard to bear and therefore forces its users to cut down on their water use. Two. Iceland has no army. In 1940, Iceland was invaded by just under 1,000 soldiers from the United Kingdom. This act was unprecedented at the time, and deprived the country of an army. Since no resistance could be matched, the Icelandic defense has since relied on the United States, but the latter ended up abandoning it and ceasing to provide it with military protection after the Cold War, the island having lost its strategic asset. The defense of the country is therefore based on NATO, of which it is a member and participates in its staff, which provided it in 2008 with 4 planes and a unit of around 50 men. The country has agreements with the Norwegian Army and the Danish Army, which also make them involved in the Icelandic defense. In 2011, there was the use of a few armored Nissan patrols, 4 radar stations which depend on the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for aerial surveillance, and 3 coast guards for maritime surveillance. All for a total of 300 active soldiers in the country. 3. The alcohol monopoly. If you are looking for alcohol while you are visiting Iceland, do not expect to find it when entering a store. There, and as in many Scandinavian countries, if not all, alcohol is a state monopoly. This means that to get any drink even a little bit alcoholic, you will have to go through Vinbudin. Vinbudins are stores dedicated to the sale of alcohol and tobacco, and are quite easily found in any Icelandic city. However, the price of the items turns out to be unusually high, compared to what can be found in France, for example. 4. Icelandic roads. This is a fact that may surprise many around the world. Accustomed to a range of choices of highways and national roads for their routes, Iceland has only one main road. It is called Route 1, or Circular Route. This road, which goes all around the country, is almost everywhere paved, and therefore passable in summer and winter, where it is systematically cleared of snow and meticulously maintained. Still, it is the only road giving you access to the main roads of the country. It will serve you to get to the various more or less famous places of this one, and its maintenance will allow you to travel the route with a simple car. However, 4x4s or SUVs are strongly recommended for the harsh winter period. Obviously, this is not the only way, and there are other roads in the country, but then these are only small gravel roads, often closed in winter and accessible only by 4x4. Finally, a last category of roads exists: tracks. You'll find them mostly inland, and they're only open in the summer. Their use is only intended for careful and seasoned drivers, because these paths can sometimes cross narrow and perilous places such as fords, crossed by rivers. It is better to be informed before embarking on driving on tracks. 5. Icelanders don't have a surname. As inconceivable as it may seem, Icelanders do not have a patronymic system at all identical to ours. In fact, they don't even have a surname, other than a mere formulation of language. It is therefore not surprising to hear Icelanders call their deans by their first name. It's not a lack of respect, but it's the most effective way to find your way around when you meet friends and especially family in Iceland. Indeed, the model of the Icelandic surname is constructed from the first name of one of the parents, often the father, where they add at the end son for boys and dóttir for women. 6. The hidden people. Icelandic beliefs suggest that this land is home to a hidden people. At the same time, it must be recognized that Icelandic folklore is conducive to such ideas in view of the number of creatures it evokes: trolls, monsters, elves. This culture is full of tales and emblematic characters that would animate and contribute to life from the country. Icelandic people are often quite sensitive to these kinds of stories, so most of them are convinced of the existence of a hidden people on their island. This idea may seem crazy, but everyone has their own heritage, and if you play this part of Icelandic culture, you will observe certain places with more depth than the majority of tourists. And this will add a mystical side to your stay. Moreover, some places are seen under protection because many testimonies of people who have seen or interacted with creatures go back. And some natives would even be delighted to share anecdotes with you or tell you more about the history of these mysterious creatures if you feel like it. 7. There are no trains in Iceland. If the fact about the roads didn't surprise you enough, this one will most likely add more. Iceland has no rail service. In other words, do not rely on train journeys to ensure your travels within the country. Despite the absence of a rail network, 3 small lines are present in Iceland, only none of them offer a service such as public transport. There are several reasons for this lack of train. First, the small size of the population. With 356,000 inhabitants, the installation of railways would not necessarily be a profitable investment, knowing that the country has an excellent bus network in return. In addition, there is great competition with the use of the automobile, which adds a lower profitability criterion for considering a rail company. Finally, the environmental conditions are really harsh in several places, especially with the seismic activity that extends throughout the region. It is this same seismic activity that was at the origin of the paralysis of air transport across almost the world in 2010, during the eruption of a volcano with an unpronounceable name from which we will spare you. 8. There is no forest either. You heard right, Icelandic lands are literally deserted, unless you consider that 0.5% of forested territory is enough for a total area of 103,000 square kilometers. These exorbitant figures reflect the situation in the country, where the only trees encountered are small specimens rarely exceeding 1 meter. It even gives rise to an Icelandic saying, "If you get lost in the forest in Iceland, get up." This low diversity is explained not only by seismic activity, but also by the passage of the Vikings according to certain sources. They would then have abused the wood for their own constructions, abandoning bare earth. But the Icelandic state is working on reforestation, because since 2015, more than 4 million trees have been planted. Although this measure is debated because the trees in question are easily recognizable pines because they are imported and exotic, the addition of any tree can only be beneficial to the environment. 9. Purest water. You don't have to be good at geography to realize one thing: Iceland is located near glaciers. Thus, the water that flows from the latter has been preserved from all forms of contamination and pollution, since it dates from an ancient period and predates any polluting discharge. This is why the country's water is considered the purest, and at the same time shows a different taste. You should know that water is drinkable throughout the country, and it is more common to drink tap water, which comes from glaciers, than bottled water. In addition to being extremely expensive at €8 per pack of water, bottled water is actually of lower quality than tap water. 10. Special culinary specialities. Finally, how do you end a video about Icelandic culture without mentioning any of the country's famous food specialties? The best known being really unexpected, it is the hakal. This shark-based dish requires rigorous preparation over several months. The time to let the flesh of the latter rot. Yes, You really have to wait for the putrefaction of this meat before you can taste it. As a result, the flesh of the shark rests 6 months underground before being left to dry for 4 months. The purpose of this process is actually to eliminate the toxic substances present in the animal. If you prefer to stay on more classic foods, dairy products like skyr will largely satisfy you. This is how our video comes to an end. Have you learned more about Iceland and its atypical culture? If so, tell us in the comments, or let us know by liking the video. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and share it to share lots of other unusual facts with your loved ones. See you soon in our new video.